The Delhi Declaration becomes one big takeaway from the G20. We've just seen a day full of great takeaways, big headlines, big achievements. It's a huge win. Narendra Modi just made the big announcement that the government described as historic and path-breaking. The government also said that the New Delhi Leaders Declaration, or the Delhi Declaration, had a huge India narrative, a big India footprint as well. It also reiterated Prime Minister Modi's statement that today's era must not be of war and called on states to uphold the principles of international law, sovereignty and international humanitarian law. Earlier in the day, Prime Minister Modi called for bridging the global trust deficit that had been deepened further by the war in Ukraine. A press conference addressed by Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has affirmed the Delhi Declaration.
हमारी टीम्स के हार्डवर्क से और आप सभी के सहयोग से नई दिल्ली G20 लीडर्स समिट डिक्लेरेशन पर सहमति बनी है। मेरा प्रस्ताव है कि इस लीडर्स डिक्लेरेशन को भी एडॉप्ट किया जाए। मैं इस डिक्लेरेशन को एडॉप्ट करने की घोषणा करता हूं। इस अवसर पर मैं हमारे मंत्रीगण, शेरपा और सभी अधिकारियों का हृदय से अभिनंदन करता हूं, जिन्होंने अथाक परिश्रम करके इसे सार्थक किया है और इसलिए वे सभी अभिनंदन के अधिकारी हैं।
The declaration that the leaders have agreed on today focuses on promoting strong, sustainable, balanced and inclusive growth. It seeks to accelerate progress on SDGs and has come up with an action plan accordingly. It envisages a green development pact for a sustainable future. It endorses high-level principles on lifestyle for sustainable development, voluntary principles on hydrogen, the Chennai Principles for a Sustainable and Resilient Blue Economy, and the Deccan Principles on Food Security and Nutrition, among others. In terms of its organization and program, the Indian presidency, if I may say so, has been exceptional. Events have been spread across 60 cities, which are truly across the length and breadth of India. There has been a popular participation and a societal involvement of an extraordinary degree. The interest in G20 proceedings have been particularly strong among our youth. It has been an opportunity to showcase our culture, traditions and heritage as well. The G20 has contributed to making India world ready and the world India ready.
This presidency, if you go through the New Delhi Leaders Declaration, it has a huge India narrative, it has a huge India footprint, whether you look at the Deccan high-level principles on food security, whether you look at the Chennai high-level principles for blue ocean economy, whether you look at the Goa roadmap for tourism, whether you look at the Gandhinagar implementation roadmap for land restoration or Jaipur call for enhanced MSMEs, all this will leave a huge footprint of India in G20. This presidency has been its focus on developing and emerging markets, no document of G20 has had such an immense focus on developing and emerging markets and the voice of the global south as this particular document has. This is a document of the global south. This is a document of the developing countries which came together and spelled out their priorities. And India has been the spokesperson of all the global south and spelled out their priorities in this document.
India, as you all are aware, through the India Stack, became the first country to develop all three foundational DPIs: the digital identity, the real-time fast payment, and a platform to safely share personal data without compromising privacy. So embedded this concept in the G20 financial inclusion agenda by formulating G20 policy recommendations for advancing financial inclusion and productivity gains through digital public infrastructure. This set of recommendations cover 5 aspects: use of DPIs and accelerating financial inclusion, fostering well-designed DPIs, regulatory and supervisory aspects of DPI, institutional and governance arrangements by DPI, and ensuring customer protection. So DPI has also been integrated into the G20 Financial Inclusion Action Plan, the FIAP, which will run between 2024 and 2026. That's a strong legacy of the Indian presidency, laying the building blocks for a globally coordinated and comprehensive policy and regulatory framework for crypto assets. The global push for clearer policies on crypto assets has gained momentum under the Indian presidency, and a global consensus is emerging on the same. The presidency will support the IMF and the FSB, and FSB is also setting the contours of the regulatory framework for a globally coordinated approach to crypto assets. So the presidency, with the support of IMF and the FSB, is setting these contours.
So on this big news day, what are the big takeaways from the New Delhi declaration? What does it mean in concrete terms? What is the major forward movement that has been achieved with that much needed consensus and broad agreement on some of those key talking points? Ashok Sajjanar and Vivek Kaju are still with us. I want to come to you all for, if you were to say 1, 2, 3, Mr. Dogra, sorry. Mr. Dogra is still with us. I'm getting old. In the morning, Mr. Sajjanar was there.
Earlier.
Ambassador Sajjanar was there in the morning.
As Shakespeare said, was there in the morning.
My apologies. He was there in the morning, as you were much earlier. But let me get your first 3 big takeaways. 1, 2, 3, if you were to rate, what are the 3 biggest takeaways from what you've just heard in the last couple of hours?
1, the very fact that we got a clean declaration. I think that is a considerable, in fact, I will say it's a very great achievement for Indian diplomacy, and congratulations are due to all concerned, especially to Minister Jaishankar, because he would have done a fair amount of the heavy lifting on this. 2, I think getting the African Union in, that was important. And 3 is the connectivity and infrastructure project, which we are
India, Middle East, Europe project.
Now, if you permit me, I'll say 1 sentence on the first bit. The sticking point was the Ukraine war. And there are 8 paragraphs devoted to the war. The first is motherhood and apple pie on conflicts. The last is Mr. Modi's comment that there is not an era for war. The remaining 6 have been very adroitly drafted. They have something in them for each country to project. That is the skill of a diplomat. It enables them to project what is needed for their audience and from their viewpoint. And one last point, that what has been left out is not principles which each country has, but the abrasive language against Russia, which was there in the Bali Declaration.
So that's, the specific naming of Russia was very much there in Bali. It's not there now. Some will see that as a climb down. Others will say it's a compromise. Rajiv Dogra, Ambassador Dogra, your three big takeaways.
Well, I'll start a little earlier with landing on the moon. That was, I think, a big statement by India that we've arrived, not just technologically, but we've arrived in the very, very select body of countries which can do things. Today, we have gone one better by saying when we do things, we take the world along. Because there had been a build-up over the last several months, not just in India, but also around the world, that this G20 is not going to be an exercise in the debating chambers, but it will take the world along because the issues are global, like climate change, or the Ukraine war, or the new digital format. So I think India's success, or the global success in getting the declaration through, is one of involvement of people and the countries. So that is one major step forward. The second step is the way Prime Minister, when he was declaring this, when he was making the statement, the way he gave credit to everyone. He used plural: ministers, Sherpas, countries. So that was very gracious. The third was much against, especially the Western media's reports of this morning or yesterday, which were very pessimistic. And
about the consensus.
About the consensus. And some of them, especially on, India's cleaning up efforts. For example, there's one in NBC, which was, I was reading, was like a drain inspector's report on all the efforts to clean up Delhi and so on. So I think now the world needs to revise its opinion of what India can do and what world can achieve together as a path away from war.
Is it just India or the global south? You heard Amitabh Kant on more than one occasion say this document in a way reflects the concerns of the global south. Do you go along with that, that India has arrived on the world stage? India potentially has arrived as a leader of the global south. The African Union being inducted formally this morning. Now some of India's concerns, or the global south's concerns on climate change or debt restructuring, all finding their way in the declaration. Does that give you hope that the global south could well be an intrinsic part of the new world order?
Rajiv, on that, I've always remained pessimist.